Everything about this trilogy is amazing.
We'll get into all of them, but Dawn is my favorite. The three of these movies are such a cool arc, especially when you look at it through the eyes of Caesar. Just such good character development. Like she studied 3 apes' different movement patterns and vocal inflection to create this one character.
I haven't studied since high school. Let's go into a recap of the trilogies, because we have Kingdom coming up, right? And this has taken place well after this trilogy has happened. So it's still probably a good idea to know like kind of this world and history of what happened before. So Andrew, can you take us through a quick-ish recap of the Planet of the Apes franchise? Welcome. I was gonna say Planet of the Apes.
Welcome to the Planet of the Apes,
Welcome to Backseat Directing,
where we talk about movies, TV shows, comics, and more.
we're your hosts,
Andrew,
and Aaron.
we put out new episodes every Monday and Thursday.
And on this episode, we're recapping the Planet of the Apes trilogy.
3, 2, 1, action. Perfectly timed as always.
Thank you. Thank you.
So today,
You are a professional, sir.
as are you, my good man. So today we're going to be covering the modern trilogy for Planet of the Apes. We're going to be covering Rise, Dawn, and War, and just kind of talking about what happened in those movies, why we like them, and any critiques. Talk about how great the CGI is. Talk about the acting, and we're going to do this in preparation for the release of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which, as of this recording, is coming out this weekend. It will have just recently come out as of the release of this episode.
Yep.
And I think we're both very excited for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, definitely more so after kind of rewatching these movies and just getting reminded of how good the story is, how good the CGI is. It looks freaking phenomenal. The acting, the motion capture performances, so brilliant. Everything about this trilogy is amazing. And there's really no like parts that are like, oh, but there's that, you know? Like there's not really anything like that in this trilogy. It's very complete, even though it has 2 directors instead of one kind of working through the whole thing, you know? And we did a trilogy draft at one point, and I drafted this onto my team, and you were like, is it good? Because it's been a while since you've seen them, but you recently rewatched them. And upon rewatch, what do you think?
Well, I was 12 when Rise came out, and I think that movie requires a little bit more patience. Even though it is really, really good, the first 2 acts, I think, are a little bit more patient filmmaking, a little bit more character development driven.
Yeah, storytelling.
And I think watching it now, being a little bit older, with a little bit more patience as a viewer, I just loved it so much more. Like going back into it, I had no idea how much like I was going to fall in love with this trilogy, and especially Dawn, which we'll get into all of them, but Dawn is my favorite. The 3 of these movies are such a cool arc, especially when you look at it through the eyes of Caesar. Just such good character development. Like he's an ape, but he's like one of the best fictional characters of all time.
Oh, for sure.
And what did you think rewatching?
So I've always loved Rise of the Planet of the Apes. It's always been one of my favorite movies. I would very consistently say it's in my top 20 or top 10 movies of all time. And I recently watched Dawn for the first time like a year ago-ish. And then I watched War for the first time this past week. For whatever reason, I just hadn't been able to see it. And so now I have like the complete story, and it's so good. I still think Rise is my favorite one, and I think it's because I just built such a big connection to the movie so long ago that it kind of has like stayed with me. However, you know this trilogy is good when so many people have a different favorite one.
Yeah.
You know, like that shows that the trilogy itself is phenomenal. And I can't be like, oh, you like that one? You suck. Like, no, like that's a good pick. You know, Dawn is your favorite one. I see why you picked. I see why people would pick War. You know, it just so happens mine is Rise. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all 3 of them are great movies, I think, for different reasons. I think that the second one definitely has the best villain. The first one has some of the coolest character development, and the third one just has like crazy beautiful visuals that all 3 of them have, but I think the third one really like perfected. And like in looking at some of the behind the scenes for this movie, you can see how much love went into it. And love in movies, a big part of that display is like the hard work. You know, you put in the hours, you put in the effort. These people did so much research. Like, we can get into it more whenever, but it was just so fascinating to look at behind the scenes on like some of the special effects and some of the visual effects. Like they had whole teams just for like the textures of the ape fur and skin. Like
Absolutely.
they had people doing research, like studying ape movement patterns. They literally went and talked to an ophthalmologist, an eye doctor, to study the movement of the eye, because so much of the character work in, especially the first movie where there's less talking from the apes, so much of the character work for them is in the eyes. So they went to an eye doctor to talk with them about the different muscles in the face that move, the movement of blinking, the way that water builds up underneath the eye to keep the eye lubricated, like all of this fine-tuning detail that they put in the effort to make sure that they could tell the story through the eyes of the characters. Like
The actors doing the sounds.
oh yeah,
They-
yeah, the performance capture.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
So good.
I just saw a clip too from Kingdom, from the red carpet, and the actor who plays the star role in Kingdom, like doing some of the ape sounds, and it's like it's very convincing. Like they really researched, like the woman who plays Maurice in the original trilogy. She like studied multiple apes. She said she based Maurice on 3 different apes, like for personality and movement, and like she studied 3 apes' different movement patterns and vocal inflection to create this one character.
I haven't studied since high school, and even then, like it was lackluster.
And it's to create an ape too, which is so cool. Like it, and like the fact that the apes, like for the majority, even for some of them, like Maurice doesn't talk that much throughout all 3. So like to put that much character work into Maurice, like when he's like a nonverbal character, it's just so cool. Like
Something that makes that so cool too is that the story itself is so strong that it makes it worth it for all of those characters to really dive into learning who they're playing and coming up with their personality, their movements, their mannerisms. Like you can have all of that, but if the story itself isn't good, all of that kind of becomes cheesy or overlooked. But everything's working together so well in this trilogy to make like this masterpiece.
there are long and very imperative sequences too that the story relies on, with little to no dialogue. Like the sequence when Caesar in Rise, when he arrives at the primate sanctuary in San Francisco, like when they're establishing Rocket's character as like the bully, and Caesar is coming into this unknown environment, he's afraid, like that dynamic and the dynamic shift, like all of that is done with the motion capture performances, with the special effects. Like they're telling the story really truly visually when you're taking out dialogue to that degree. Like even the sounds and inflections that they're making, like to speak as apes, so like that, even those elements are like heavily driven like into the story. Like it's very thought out to every minor detail.
Yeah, and there's a lot of emotional beats as well. You know, like there's parts of this trilogy that are really sad, and then there's parts of this trilogy that are kind of funny, and then there's parts where you're ready to run through a freaking wall because you're pumped up so much.
Well, I'm so invested in the characters and their relationships. Like from like Rocket, Maurice, Koba, Caesar, like Cornelius, like I know their names, and I like am invested in the apes as people, because they give them Bad Monkey is a great addition to the 3rd movie. Oh my gosh, he's so funny. I see it when he showed up, Sierra's like, he's definitely gonna die. Like he's too lovable. And spoiler alert, he did not die.
He did not.
I know they
They kept that guy alive.
fucking killed Caesar though. Those sons of bitches.
Yeah, that was wrong. Spoiler.
I said spoiler alert before I said.
Okay, so let's go into a recap of the trilogies, because we have Kingdom coming up, right? And this has taken place well after this trilogy's happened. So it's still probably a good idea to know like kind of this world and history of what happened before. So Andrew, can you take us through a quick-ish recap of the Planet of the Apes franchise?
Okay, this is my job. I'll try to do it quick. So we start with Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and we have James Franco as the main character. He's a scientist who's trying to create a drug to cure Alzheimer's, because his father, played by John Lithgow, has Alzheimer's. So he invents this drug called ALZ-112, which they test on apes, and it gives the apes increased intelligence and problem-solving skills. When one of the apes goes rogue and attacks the scientists in the facility, they have to shut the project down. Now, they learned that she was going rogue to protect her child that they didn't know that she had given birth to. That child, that young ape, would come to be Caesar. So Caesar's mother, Bright Eyes, is put down during that altercation, and James Franco's character takes Caesar home and raises him as kind of like a son, rather than a pet. Because Caesar has enhanced intelligence. They learn that ALZ-112 has not only like improved the intelligence of the apes, but it's gone so far past that to like improving it to human levels. Caesar picks up sign language very quickly. He learns like human skills. He learns eating. And now Caesar eventually gets in an altercation. He fights the neighbor to protect the father, played by John Lithgow, and Caesar gets sent off to a primate sanctuary. Now, at the sanctuary, Caesar sees how apes are treated by humans, and he sees Tom Felton's character abusing the apes, and he starts to build up this resentment towards James Franco's character for allowing him to be dropped off in the primate sanctuary, but also resentment towards humans in general for the way that apes are treated as like second-class citizens, like these like animals that they can step on. So Caesar refuses his chance to go home when James Franco ultimately can break him out, which is a big character moment that we'll go into more. And he decides to stay with the apes and help them break free. He first escapes himself, steals the ALZ-112, and brings it back to give all the apes in the sanctuary enhanced intelligence. Then he organizes an escape attempt where he frees all the apes. And by the end of that movie, he has a standoff with the police on the Golden Gate Bridge. The apes break free into the forest, and Caesar, like, thoughtfully, emotionally says goodbye to James Franco's character and leaves the apes all like looking to him as their leader with a sign of respect, and they move off into the trees. So then we pick up in Dawn. Now in Dawn, we are shown that the ALZ-112, while it increases the intelligence of apes, the ALZ-112 has progressed because James Franco tried to put it into more of a viral strain, which now became the ALZ-113. And he was trying to help fix the problem because the ALZ-112 was wearing off in humans, but in doing so, he made a strain that had an increased viral load, and now it's become deadly to humans, but also spreads insanely quickly. And there's been this huge epidemic where at the beginning of Dawn, a lot of humanity's been killed off. Only those of humans that are left in Dawn are ones that were born with a genetic component making them resistant to this new strain of this virus. So those are the only humans left on Earth. A few of them wander into Caesar and his apes' territory because they're looking to start up this dam, which would give them power so that they can turn their lights back on and have electricity in their little human compound back in the city. Now, they discover that a group of intelligent apes are living in this forest when they happen upon them, and Caesar lets them go, and they make a show of force. The apes come back to the humans in the city, show their numbers, which are insane. Tons and tons of apes. They put their foot down, and they're like, humans stay here, apes stay in the forest. But the humans have to go back there because they insinuate that they're going to fall into anarchy and people are going to get hurt and die if they can't keep up the appearance of the electricity and the modern way that humans live in. Without electricity, there's going to be carnage. So they send a team back out to talk with Caesar, and Caesar's compassionate. He foresees that there will be a war, foresees the next movie, if he doesn't like work something out with the humans. So while he's letting them try to start the dam up, Koba's building resentment towards Caesar for kind of being friendly with the humans.
Koba's like, why are we letting them do this? And Caesar's saying if we don't, they're going to try to by force.
And Koba said, let them.
Yeah, and then Caesar's like, well, how many apes are going to die then?
And Koba says, well,
this is our one chance for peace.
Yeah. Koba thinks their best chance is to fight while the humans are weak and like don't have the electricity and all the weapons.
You see, as the audience, you see both sides.
Yeah, and you see on Koba's face, like he's wearing the marks of why he makes that decision.
Yeah.
But eventually that resentment builds to the point where Koba has an assassination attempt on Caesar, shoots Caesar, and Caesar falls kind of into the trees. And Koba blames that on the humans and uses that to kind of rally the apes around him because the apes worship Caesar. Like, they respect him so much. So when he makes them believe that a human killed Caesar, he can easily convince them to go to war against the humans. And he leads this big army against the human little village in San Francisco. And lots of apes die, like Caesar predicted. Lots of humans die. There's lots of carnage. And eventually, Caesar gets found by the small group of humans that we've come to trust, where Jason Clarke kind of brings him back into the city. They help heal Caesar's wounds. And Caesar's strong enough to go back and confront Koba, who now has all the humans in cages because the apes won that conflict. Caesar has his showdown with Koba. Caesar wins, and he leads the apes out of the city because he recognizes that the humans have used their electricity to use a radio to call for reinforcements from the north, which leads us right into War for the Planet of the Apes. Because those reinforcements that come from the north bring us Woody Harrelson's character, who is like this very imposing colonel for the humans. He's ruthless. He kills his own men. He doesn't think twice about murder. So the those humans know that there's a species of intelligent apes living in the woods, and they feel threatened by them. So there's an important part of the third movie is also that they introduce the disease turning, like the disease is mutating and starting to turn humans like primitive. So
Yeah,
that
you find that out later.
yeah, further into the war for the Planet of the Apes. And like I said, the Colonel has no problem putting these people down. So like he's shooting his own men who get infected, which sets up like the future of the world.
And he does so to prevent it from spreading.
Yes.
Like it's
He
not
does it
like
with a motive.
Yeah, he's not just killing them to kill them. He's doing it to protect the rest of his people. But the fact that he can do it still makes him menacing.
But this disease is so important because it sets up the future of the franchise. Like the original Planet of the Apes movies are a planet where apes are in control and like humans are primitive. So like this sets up that shift. The disease mutating shows how like humans are eventually going to become the primitive ones and apes will become like the dominant intelligent species on Earth. So anyway, in a war, starts off with Woody Harrelson taking an elite wet team into the inner sanctum of the apes colony for an assassination attempt on Caesar because he thinks they'll crumble without their leader. He ends up accidentally killing Caesar's son because they look alike, and Caesar's wife too, which is Cornelia. And Caesar comes back and devastated by the loss of his family. He now feels driven by revenge, which they allude to a lot throughout the movie of him being similar to Koba because he wants revenge on the colonel. He sends the apes away to a new colony that they've been trying to find to escape the humans, and Caesar takes a small group of himself, Rocket, and Maurice on a journey to go assassinate the colonel. By the time they get to the colonel, they find out that the colonel's already captured the apes on their journey, on their voyage. He captured all of the apes from their colony, and Caesar goes to attempt to make the assassination himself. Caesar's captured, and the result of that movie is that they communicate with Maurice and Bad Ape and Rocket on the outside to coordinate an escape attempt. While the apes are escaping, another rival military faction comes and attacks the colonel's military force. The apes narrowly escape while the humans destroy each other by creating an avalanche. And then the apes find their way to their new colony and live prosperously. But Caesar, unfortunately, was wounded in the final conflict and dies, but dies having seen his people come to prosperity.
And then
I feel like that's the most succinct way I can say that because it's just, there's a lot.
No, that was pretty good.
A couple
for
minutes,
3
but it's-
movies worth. Yeah, that was pretty good. Isn't it interesting how the human characters stay within their one movie?
Yes.
They don't move through the trilogy.
It really is a cool way of highlighting that the story is about the apes themselves. It's highlighting Caesar because the humans, despite how important James Franco is to the first movie, we just have to assume he's dead in the second movie. Like they really don't highlight
time has gone by.
Yeah. They don't highlight the human characters at all. There's no reference to Jason Clarke's character or there's no real strong reference to James Franco's character either after the end of that movie.
Yeah, not really at all. They're just following Caesar's journey.
Yeah, they do a really good job of alluding to it in different senses. Like I really like in Dawn in the beginning when he's talking to his son and his son's like, Koba says humans are bad, and he's like, Caesar says Koba learned hatred from humans, but nothing else. So like he's saying that like there's good things to be learned from humans too. Like he learned like love and compassion from the parenting he received from James Franco's character. Like Caesar in that movie sees the good and bad sides of humans. It's not till the end of that movie that he sees the good and bad sides of apes too. Like he tells himself at the end that he was being too trusting of Koba, too trusting of apes.
So what are some of your favorite moments of the trilogy? I know that's really hard.
Yeah,
there's so many.
Let's pick maybe we each like pick one or two from each movie.
Yeah. So in Rise,
which I'll recap Rise real quick to tee you up. Rise of the Planet of the Apes came out in 2011. It's PG-13. It's an hour and 45 minutes long, has a 7.6 on IMDb.
A shame.
It was the only one directed by Rupert Wyatt, and it earned a box office of $481 million. Successful movie.
Yeah, I feel like we should go into the other ones too. We have Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, 2014, rated PG-13, 2 hours and 10 minutes long. Also has a 7.6 out of 10. And as I scroll all the way down to the box office, this one brought in 710 million.
And then we have War for the Planet of the Apes, which came out again 3 years later in 2017. It's PG-13 again, 2 hours and 20 minutes long, with this time a 7.4 on IMDb. Again, directed by Matt Reeves, with a box office dropping down a little bit to 490 million.
Yeah, I guess you can say this is a successful
franchise.
trilogy.
Yeah. What? So like, $1.5 billion or something, based on my quick
Yeah,
math.
give or take a little bit. Yeah, absolutely. But some of my favorite moments in Rise is kind of one when we start to see that Caesar's intelligent and we get to see him like problem solving. And then the character moment where he attacks the neighbor because he's protecting his dad, his
Grandfather.
grandfather.
In a sense.
Yeah. That was a really powerful moment and kind of took the turn that sets up everything else.
It makes you question Caesar in that moment too, because like he's giving more into his animalistic impulses. Like he's
Right.
almost ready to beat that guy to death.
Yeah.
But it's an urge a lot of people can
But then he recognizes it.
yeah, and stops himself.
Right.
Because he's caught in between two worlds. I mean,
Yeah.
and James Franco says early in the movie that like his intelligence is like compounding, like even just in like month span. So like he's
Yeah.
becoming more and more human-like
Like
as time
in
goes
that
along.
moment, he is learning
Yeah.
as it's happening. And then I love all of the stuff that happens in the sanctuary so much, where he's getting beat up. He has to figure out a way to show dominance, take out the leader, which is Rocket, right?
Yeah.
So he takes out Rocket.
Which, fun fact, Rocket and Bright Eyes are played by the same motion capture artist. That guy came in to kind of do a workshop. He did a class with all the cast members on how to move like an ape. So he was like their movement expert, like working on moving right in the shoulders and finding the position. And I think he had a history in like Cirque du Soleil and like a dance background. And they have, if you look behind the scenes, they have like their motion capture suits on with the retroreflective or infrared panels and the motion capture or the performance capture stuff headset on. But then they have like these cool crutches
yeah.
that they use to mimic ape movement so that their hands can reach the ground, because apes obviously have a longer ape index than us.
Yeah. And I really liked how it showed him using the other apes to help him take control. He like gives him a little bit of food or
Apes
gives him the
together,
toy. Yeah.
strong.
Right. And I just love movies that kind of feel like they're sneaky, and like
Yeah.
and they're executing a plan.
Well, they're also like, in terms of the sneakiness, like they sell it so well with apes are so smooth. If you watch apes move in a zoo, when I mean, a lot of times in a zoo, you'll see them chilling, but if you see them go from point A to point B, it's so effortless. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the way Caesar moves as he's escaping, like the sanctuary for the first time to go get the ALZ, which obviously, I didn't say it before, but ALZ obviously a reference to Alzheimer's in the name of the drug. But he's just so smooth.
It's like Spider-Man, but better.
Yeah.
Like he's moving even smoother.
He doesn't have to think about where his feet are going to land. He doesn't have
Yeah.
to think about his next movement at all.
It's like us walking, but it's so much
But
cooler.
for them, it's climbing. Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
awesome. But it does feel very stealth, like the approach.
Yeah.
And then I love the genius battle tactic he has on the Golden Gate Bridge, where
That's where I was going to go next.
Yeah,
That's my next like big point is that bridge fight, like where they're sending some up and they're sending some under. And then I love how foggy it is.
Yes.
The cinematography is really cool. It's still really bright, but they're still obscuring your vision.
well, that's why when I was watching Dawn immediately, back to back, I was like, man, if Caesar was coordinating this attack on the human colony instead of Koba, so many less apes would have died, because they would have taken so many more people like along the rooftops. Like when you watch Koba's plan of attack in Dawn, they just come rushing in on horseback
that's such
out
a
of the
good
fog.
point.
Like Caesar would have definitely taken a more methodical approach, because Caesar's like this like brilliant military general. Like he first of all, he's brilliant because he knows when to avoid a fight and how to avoid a fight, but also when it comes to the moment to actually like execute a plan, he's so intelligent. Like he shows his tactical genius. Like the bridge is such a good example. He sends a team below and above, and a team
there's still
forward.
a few.
So they're attacking the SWAT team on 3 angles.
That's such a good point. I didn't even like think of that, how Koba just went straight on.
It's indicative of Koba's personality,
Absolutely.
though, right?
Yeah.
Because like Koba doesn't think like Caesar, but Koba's incredibly intelligent too, as we see in his scene in Dawn. When he tricks
that
the
was
humans.
my next like favorite point too. Like we're so in sync with these moments where he comes up and he's like acting like he's just this dumb monkey, like
Yeah,
those
those two scenes I think perfectly illustrate the different way that Koba is from Caesar, because Koba does understand humans in a sense like Caesar. He understands what humans think about apes. He understands they think little of apes, so he uses that against them. But he also, when he gets mad, he's overpowered by his emotion. Whereas like Caesar on the bridge is like, in Rise, he's like, all right,
He's looking for peace.
Yeah, he's like, how do we get out of this the way that saves the most lives overall, not even just apes. He's such a good moral character too.
Yeah.
But I want to I know we're talking about a lot of things back and forth. I want to get back to the sanctuary to talk about probably my personal favorite moment in Rise. So
Okay.
many good moments in
Yeah.
this one movie, but when like they're about to like attack the human, or they're about to like, I think Tom Felton's about to have one of the apes shot or something, and Caesar goes,
No.
like
Yeah.
this is the first time Caesar
Yeah.
speaks, and it's such a
That was
perfect,
epic.
impactful, and also like most babies, like a lot of people's first word will be no. It's a simple word, one syllable, so like it's a sensible first word, but it's also used so impactfully, like in the movie, like the jaw-dropping effect of like the humans in the room on Caesar speaking, the other apes like looking at him like this guy is different, like he's so imposing too. Like Caesar has so much presence on screen, whether it's that moment or like when they bring the humans in Dawn for the first time to the colony, Caesar stands up and like puts his hand up, all the apes hush, as a silence falls over the crowd. And I was just like, I was in my seat like giggling. I was like, Caesar has so much presence and power, like, and also just so much genuine respect. It's not even fear. Like the apes respect the hell out of him.
But they also fear him.
They fear him
same
like when he bows up to Koba,
Yeah.
and Koba like puts his head down and his hand up. Like they recognize him as a physical presence, but like it's also like he doesn't. It's like that Green Lantern thing. Like he doesn't rule by fear; he rules by respect.
I feel like they also know that he's just smarter.
Yeah,
You know, like
they trust him.
right.
They like
Kind of bouncing back to where we were. One of my favorite shots in Dawn is right after Koba is like being all goofy in front of the humans when he runs into them for the first time, and he's walking away. And he's like smiling, and then he immediately goes back to his pissed off look.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that was cold. That was so cold right there.
he thought so quick on a dime there
Yeah.
too.
And then when he comes back, you know, and he gets the gun, like, oh, brutal.
Yeah,
So cool.
it's very clever though.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, he's very
You can
smart.
see his intelligence over just the two others that went with him.
Yeah.
You know, like being able to kind of perform as this dumb ape and get the gun and use the gun and figure out how to get more, and then he confides the plan to get what he wants. So like he's also really smart.
Yeah, he's an incredible foil to Caesar too, because like the way that they have Caesar and Koba fighting for the allegiance of Caesar's son is just, it's so interesting. Like they do such a good job of making you see Koba's side that you can see why Caesar's son would be between the two. It's like Caesar seems overly compassionate to the humans, but he's really trying to protect the apes if you listen to him.
Yeah, and then kind of when it's too late, you realize like, oh, he's going too far.
Yeah.
You know, and that's when his son realizes that
Well,
he's
it's
going too far.
and it's crazy that he shot Caesar the way he did. Like the events line up in such a way that just the slightest change would completely alter the way that the conflict lies out. Because when Koba's coming back to tell Caesar that the humans are stockpiling weapons, Koba first finds out from Caesar's son that Caesar's taken in humans to help fix the dam. And so Koba approaches Caesar like aggressively instead of just coming to him and saying, "Why are you trusting these people? Like they're building weapons." And then Caesar,
He didn't even say that.
he never, yeah, exactly. He never
He didn't even get it out. He
and-
kept that to himself.
yeah, but they would have had that conversation if events lined up differently.
Right.
If the humans weren't already there working on it, if Koba was just a little bit less hot-headed, he could have talked to Caesar about it. But instead, they have the physical altercation first, and now Koba's like been beaten down, and he does the supplicating gesture from the first movie, and he doesn't want to have that conversation anymore. Now he's already building his mutiny against Caesar. He feels like I think at that moment, like he stopped trusting Caesar. Like he says later, he says Caesar loves humans more than apes. And so he truly, in his like twisted mind, like part of him is trying, I think, to save all the apes from Caesar, which is crazy because he doesn't understand that Caesar's trying to save all the apes, and Caesar's definitely taking the better route. But then like he shows the other side of him that is just more selfish, I think, when he kills Rocket's son. Like when he throws Rocket's son over the banister, it's like, okay, he cares about the power, he cares about the revenge more than he cares about the apes.
It's a hard decision to make, right? Like, do you take the route of offering peace when you kind of know that they're going to take advantage of you the moment they can? Or do you just skip all of that and don't even give them the chance of peace and assert your dominance right away?
Well, as a viewer, they're doing like the humans are doing everything to make us as viewers like want to side with Koba. Honestly, like when that gun shows up in the toolbox that the guy with the shaved head snuck in to their colony. It's like, dang, like, is Caesar trusting them too much? Like, do they need to just...
They're doing everything to make you not trust humans.
Yeah.
Our own kind.
Yeah. And
they're showing the flaws in humanity.
They're doing such a good job of making you root for the apes too.
Yeah.
Because Caesar's doing like everything right.
Stupid person.
Yeah. Why did you sneak the gun in there? Like, why are you guys building up defenses? But the writing is so good, like it only makes sense for Gary Oldman to want to build up defenses and prepare for the worst case scenario. But then how does that look to Koba? It looks like they're preparing to attack. You know, it's so well thought out that like it makes sense from the human side and then both sides of the ape sides. And then you can see like, well, there's only one way for this to culminate, and it's in war and conflict.
That's what makes such a good story, is when you can see the points for anyone's decision.
But at any given time, Caesar is making the best decisions out of anyone. Like he's making logical, moral, good decisions.
I mean, you can argue the humans were too. They didn't attack.
Yeah, but I feel like them
besides that
weapons,
one human that brought the one weapon in.
But also them stockpiling weapons at near that boatyard is like a sign of aggression. You know what I mean? It's just preparation, and it makes perfect sense, logical sense.
I mean, they had all these spears and stuff. You know, like is that the same thing?
Well, they also
they're stocking up on their weapons,
but they also already had guns at the compound. They went to get like a bunch more, so that's like an act of preparing for war, which is worst case scenario. It doesn't mean the humans want to do that, but you can see why they have to prepare. You can see that if they don't get electricity, they're going to like fall apart. Humans might cease to exist, which is a big
they preparing to get those weapons for the apes or to protect themselves from other humans as well?
For apes. I think that was pretty clear in the conversation between Jason Clarke and Gary Oldman's characters.
Okay.
Because like, but in their defense, like the apes showed up and like said, hey, look at this. Look at what you like. The apes don't need electricity. They can live fine off. They're fast. They're stronger. Like, and they can, if they have guns, they could use them.
Yeah.
Like, so in the humans' defense, it's like, what are they supposed to think? Like, they don't know Caesar in and out. They don't know Caesar as a person.
I mean, yeah, it's fine to be prepared. That's being prepared isn't necessarily like an act of war, you know, but at no point were the humans outside of that one guy aggressors, you know?
Yeah.
Like they didn't go and attack the humans. Even when they first ran into them, I guess he did shoot the ape, but that was the only moment where they really showed the aggression. But Caesar right there told him like, hey, we're fine. He also stay out of the woods.
He didn't know they were intelligent apes.
Right.
Like if a bear came at you in the woods, you'd probably shoot it. You wouldn't be like, it's humane. It's humane to not shoot this bear.
I mean, Koba killed the bear.
Yeah.
And they didn't show the bear mercy.
Yeah.
You know, like
he was defending his son and nobody would judge him for that. You know what I mean?
And you can argue that the humans were doing the same. And I think that's why Caesar in that moment was able to forgive them and tell them like, you stay here, we stay there, and we'll be good.
But that was looked at as his first sign of weakness towards humans. Right. And I think that this is an example, this conversation is right here is an example of why Dawn is the best movie. I think you could talk about Dawn all day. It shows so many complicated sides to humans and the apes.
So what about war? What do we like about war? What do we like about War for the Planet of the Apes?
It was my least favorite of the trilogy. I can see why it has a little bit lower of a rating on IMDb, which is only 0.2.
Yeah,
but I can see why it garnered less at the box office. It doesn't have quite as much, I think, juice to it that Dawn had. Dawn deservedly is the highest grossing movie in the trilogy. But I do really love the special effects in War. Like, oh my goodness, it's a big jump from Rise to Dawn. I think Dawn looks really good, and then War looks even just a little bit better. Very chef's kiss.
Yeah, I agree.
The snow, dude. The snow is beautiful environmentally, but also the now they have the challenge of the snow falling on ape fur. When in reality, obviously, Andy Serkis is giving a motion capture performance.
Yeah, I really liked the twist with how the virus is becoming more of a threat. Like it not only made the apes intelligent and killed humans, but now it's making humans like revert even further back, even before death. You know, so now you have these primitive humans, it's like a cool little twist, you know, where it just gets that much more complicated. You know, like uh, the captain person, the
Colonel.
captain, yeah, the colonel, where he's having to make those decisions to kill his own men, his own son, to prevent the spread of this disease. You know, like
Yeah, I like that it's morally complicated. I just feel like it was kind of not as satisfying for the colonel to die from the disease, like when he killed Caesar's family. And well, not to die, he killed himself at the end of the movie.
yeah. I mean, when I was watching it, I kind of had the feeling that Caesar wasn't going to kill him. You know, that
I
something
didn't want
else was
Caesar.
going
I
to.
didn't want Caesar to kill him,
Yeah.
but the decision was made for him, which also feels anticlimactic instead of Caesar making the decision.
I think the thing that I liked least is how long Caesar is on the ropes and how long Caesar is not on top. You know, like it just felt like he was a prisoner for so long.
I feel like Caesar was kind of like a victim to the story rather than the first two. He's driving the story.
Mm-hmm.
Like in this movie, like the colonel's the aggressor, and then Caesar's kind of like playing to his game, like coming back after him for revenge. And then Caesar's a prisoner, and then by the time Caesar's back in the driver's seat, it's like 20 minutes left in the movie.
Right. Yeah. I think.
And then for him to die right after that too, it's like we didn't get that Caesar that I love from Dawn
Mhm.
for like enough of the movie.
Even with that said, like that barely changes my opinion of the franchise. You know, like it's still a really good movie. Like I was definitely like locked in the whole time. You know.
I think it really mirrors Dark Knight Rises. Or I'm sorry, the Dark Knight trilogy overall.
Mm.
Like the first movie is the origin story, Rise, which ironically is the name of the last Dark
first-
Knight movie
yeah.
and the first Apes movie. But the first movie is the origin story, begins and Rise of the Planet of the Apes. The second movie has the best villain, and then the third movie kind of has this like off into the sunset vibes ending. Only it's a little more satisfactory to me in Dark Knight Rises because Bruce gets to live.
Mhm.
But like, I kind of just don't like how war kills off like three of our main characters. Like it kills off Caesar, his wife, and his son.
Yeah.
Like now, like Cornelius has like no family unless you count his, boy, I guess would be his sister-in-law.
I don't know. How
It's his brother's wife.
Lake.
Lake.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lake Laogai.
Yeah, it's a good trilogy. So, what are you thinking about this next one coming out? So, we obviously did our box office draft at the beginning of this year, drafting the movies that we thought were going to make the most money, and whoever's team made the most money at the end wins the box office draft. And I have this movie on my team, and I think at the beginning of the year you were kind of like lukewarm about that choice for it being on my team. You know, like you didn't think that it would bring in a ton. I'm sure you thought that it would bring in a decent amount. But what are your kind of thoughts going into it now, especially after rewatching the trilogy and now like maybe refalling in love with it? How do you think the movie will be? But then also, how do you think the box office return is going to be?
After seeing the most recent trailer, I think the movie will be really cool. I don't know that it's going to be perfect, but the plot line that they've drawn up with like an ape protecting like a human that's more intelligent than the others and like going against his own kind to like make this moral decision reminds me of Caesar. Seems very cool. So I'm very into the plot, and I think the movie will likely be good to say the least. But we're changing directors again, right? So
Yep.
we had Rupert Wyatt, then 2 movies with Matt Reeves, and now we have Wes Ball. So there's always like it shifted very well from Rupert Wyatt yeah, I believe so. It shifted very well from Wyatt over to Reeves, so they could have the same thing here. Box office wise, I think we'll probably see somewhere between 300 and 500 million. I think I could see it landing in the top 10 box office for the year. It's going to depend on how good the movie is, because I don't think they can rely as much on the previous movies. They can definitely rely on the IP, but they can't rely on that to skyrocket them to like 700 million because like they had a closed trilogy. And I think in that sense, people aren't always as excited to see like a closed trilogy like reopened with a fourth. Like
Yeah.
historically, like, you know, I don't know how excited people are for that.
So it seems like there's two camps. There's the people that
The purists.
yeah, they really love the trilogy that we have, and they're just excited to see what happens. And then you have the people that love the trilogy and they think this movie is unnecessary and that it's just a money grab. So they're probably assuming that the story won't be as good. And then also, what do you think about the CGI? Do you think the CGI is going to stand up? Because these three movies, Rise, Dawn, and War, are some of the best looking movies of our generation. Like, they look so good, and you can argue that they look a lot better than things that have been coming out recently. Like, do you think that's going to happen with this? Do you think they're going to like take a step back where the quality maybe isn't that good, or maybe they try to push the envelope a little bit and like some of the stuff is a little over the top, or like because maybe the physics don't seem to line up, and there's some spots where you can kind of catch it, like in the first three, everything looked so real, and are they going to be able to maintain that and tell a good story?
Yeah, they're probably going to have to rely on apes too more than ever in the past because there will be less humans than the other stories. I think that based on the trailer, it looks like it's going to hold up really well. It's hard to tell because trailer shots sometimes end up looking differently in movies, and then obviously trailers, 2 minutes of 3 minutes of a
It's a good
2 hour
sign if the
movie.
trailer doesn't look bad, though, for the CGI.
I'm expecting the CGI to look pretty good. I think that the work they're kind of standing on the shoulders of giants in a sense. Like so much research has already been done from like every aspect.
They have all these systems in place already.
It's just a matter of executing it well, especially when it comes to the movement. Like if you look at the CGI like layers to something as simple as Maurice jumping over the railing in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, it's like they literally when they originally started doing the CGI for the apes, they animated their skeletal system. So like you'll never see their bones in the movie, but they animated the skeletal system to give like real movement patterns, and then they overlaid the muscle, and they overlaid the skin tissue, and they overlaid the hair. They literally designed all of that to give the characters and the apes like the true weight.
Proper weight,
and the proper proportions, because motion capture performance done by a human, we have different proportions, like especially drastically different when it comes to Andy Serkis playing baby Caesar. So like if they're putting all that in again, theoretically, it would be a fantastic looking movie with just newer technology. When they started like with this movie with Rise in 2011, a lot of the technology they were using was only a couple years old. Like, and that's from the special, like a documentary I watched with the special effects team on Rise. Like, he specifically said that some of the technology was only a couple years old. So like, it's more than a decade later since then,
Yeah.
Right.
I think that it's going to be good, mainly because each movie kind of seems to be its own thing.
Yeah, but now we
throughout
don't.
the trilogy.
But now we don't have that same through line with Caesar. Like, do you feel? I personally will miss Caesar. It's not going to ruin the movie for me.
That's definitely the biggest concern for me. I think more so than the director switching and stuff like that, is because that has been the main thread through the whole trilogy.
Not
so
only
far,
Caesar, but
Caesar.
his relationships. Like, I can't tell you how much I love Caesar and Rocket going from being like Rocket as the bully to Rocket being his most loyal and trusted ally over 3 movies. Like, I love the bond, camaraderie, and relationship between those two. And then Maurice as well, being like the first ape in the sanctuary to show Caesar kindness, to again being one of his best friends and like trusting him with the future of his child. Like, he's like telling him his son will know who his father was at the end of war, like at that emotional moment. So like those characters are gone. Those relationships are gone. So they're gonna have to make us care about new characters. So that's a lot of story work.
Yeah, but I mean, I fell in love with Caesar the first time, so like if they do it properly, I'm sure I can fall in love with this new character.
I believe my understanding, this new character, there's a character I think whose name is Proxima Caesar, but I think one of the characters in the new movie, probably the main character, is a descendant of Caesar.
That's what I've heard too. I haven't looked into it too much. I don't want to know
Ruin
too
it.
much.
But if that's the case, like I already like him.
Yeah,
because he's Caesar's descendant. Like,
yeah, absolutely. All right, I think that kind of wraps up our summary and recap and thoughts of the first trilogy, and then our expectations going into this next movie. I hope it makes more money than what you said for my box office score. We're going to the theaters to see it probably, so probably this weekend.
It's going to be shown in IMAX and stuff. It'll make a good amount of money. I'm curious to see how audiences respond to it.
Yeah, I want to know what you guys think. One, which movie of the trilogy so far is your favorite?
Done.
There's no wrong answers in this one, so let us know what you think down in the comments. Tell us about your excitement levels for Kingdom, and We post new full episodes every Monday and Thursday, so make sure you hit that subscriber button and notification bell so you don't miss anything, because sometimes we put out extra content that you don't want to miss. Andrew, where else are we?
We're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, X. We're anywhere you find your podcast. We're on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. Make sure to follow us on Spotify and give us a rating, preferably 5 stars. But the absolute best thing that you could do for our show, which would be a huge favor to us, is if you would share us with your friends and family. Go ahead and tell them to join the Discord if they have an interest in movies, or even if they don't have an interest in movies, because why not? But if they join that Discord, how much do they have to pay?
It is free.
So they can join that for free, and we can talk about movies and shows and all the good stuff that we love. And you can also make episode topic suggestions in there, which we'll normally get around to pretty quickly because we love having suggestions.
Everyone who is listening right now, we just broke their speakers. We apologize.
Their eardrum rattled.
You'll have to watch the rest of this with the captions on. But thanks so much for watching, and
That's a wrap.